Clearly, things are volatile out there, and that can be gut-wrenching, both for OGs and newcomers alike. But the fundamentals, both for the crypto market in general and for Hedera in particular, are still fantastic. And even though there's plenty of risk out there, I want to focus on those fundamentals. We are going to get into the HBAR market and the crypto market a little bit later in the show, but we're going to start off focusing on those fundamentals. Welcome back. I'm Brandon, the HBAR Bull, here once again to bring you the latest in the Hedera ecosystem. But as always, none of this is financial advice. Use it for entertainment or educational purposes only. So in recent months, I've been talking a lot about the potential for these basketed crypto ETF products. I think they're going to have a huge impact on the market, but there's a new product that's coming out that gives that a little bit of a twist. It's the CoinMarketCap 20 Index DTF, or Decentralized Token Folio. So instead of representing these assets in an ETF wrapper, it's going to use a token. Using the CoinMarketCap 20 Index as its benchmark, the token gives exposure to 20 different crypto assets. Currently minted on Binance Smart Chain, it has about $3.8 million worth of assets under management. HBAR has been fluctuating between number 16 and 17 on that list with a current weight of 0.22%. Now, I wasn't expecting this kind of a token. I was focused more on the ETFs, but it makes perfect sense considering the regulatory environment we find ourselves in. Now, putting on my Saucerswap hat, I want to bridge this token over and make it available on Hedera's premier DEX to give both investors and liquidity providers an easy way to participate in this basketed product. And it's that regulatory environment and the freedom it gives to cause this kind of innovation, both on the TradFi front and on the DeFi front, that I think has tremendous potential in this space. And speaking of TradFi, I want to get into an interview that I just had. It's an exclusive with Gregg from the Hedera Foundation. Today, I'm excited to have the Chief Business Officer at the Hedera Foundation. We have Gregg. Gregg, thank you so much for hopping back on.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's absolutely my pleasure. There has been a lot going on over the past few weeks. We'll start off here. It's been about a month since we got our first HBAR-backed ETF. That is HBR, ticker symbol, put out by Canary Capital. How do you think things are going with that so far?
Yes, it's certainly been a volatile month. The price action, I think, of the industry has been a difficult one for many market participants. But just in terms of having a product that's out there that's listed on the NASDAQ, having the product be the third asset after Bitcoin and ETH to be supported in an ETF wrapper, I think is huge. So really pleased with just the pace by which Canary Capital team has gone about bringing products to market. And, just the way that this is now accessible to so many new institutions and individuals. I, for one, bought some of this product through my retirement fund via, E-Trade Morgan Stanley. And there's a whole bunch of different, new venues by which you can access HBAR, which is really exciting.
Yeah, well, I mean, when Bitcoin first came out with all of their ETFs, it was a buy the rumor, sell the fact. We kind of knew it was coming, and then people sold, the Bitcoin market went down a bit. But having that tool since then, the long-term impacts to the Bitcoin price have been tremendous, and I think the same is going to be the case. I know you can't talk about the price, but I think the same is going to be it's going to be the same for the HBAR market. So one of the things that we heard just last week, the SEC and the IRS just gave guidance that paves the way to allow ETF issuers to pass staking rewards on to investors. My question is HBR going to be able to pass on those staking rewards, or is it going to require a different ETF to do that? Essentially, is it going to be able to be amended to allow staking rewards?
I think it's a really good question. I think it's one that ultimately only the Canary Capital team can answer. But I'm certainly optimistic that any investor in these types of ETF products can also participate in the staking yields. Now that the IRS has provided that clarity and that there is support from a number of different regulators, I think we would expect to see that feature. There are pluses and minuses. I think some of the way that rewards are being allocated make it more cumbersome or difficult for the accounting books of various financial firms. So there might be investment participants that would prefer not to have the staking yield participated through the ETF, just because of the accounting complexities. So be interested to see which choose to adopt staking yields directly into the ETFs, which choose not to. I think there are enough different products that are in the market or plan to be in the market that there's probably room for all the above.
All right. Well, time will tell. One of the things that I was really surprised at is it took a long time with the Bitcoin ETFs to actually get options. And not long after HBR launched, we already have options. I've been working with Tasty Trade with one of my brokers. I actually had to call them because I wasn't able to trade those options and I had to ask them to add it. And that was just some additional controls over thinly traded options. But it is a really powerful tool. What are your thoughts around options already being available on HBR?
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, it's a sign when you have a new product that's wrapped in a vehicle that can be accessed through traditional infrastructure rails. You have new market participants. You have greater means by which people can gain exposure in their portfolios, whether that's direct to spot or through a variety of option strategies. So I think it's certainly a nice added tool and benefit to the ecosystem that there are the options came so quickly to the ETF product, and that there's new avenues to express risk.
Yeah, no question about that. It can be used in a lot of different ways, both by traditional investors, and then the degens can get some exposure to those as well and learn how to use them, and they can use them on other assets as well. So another question I get on a really regular basis is, at least over the past couple of weeks, is around the Grayscale HBAR ETF. Now, I'm not as concerned about that at this point because we already have one, but of course we want as many options as possible. Do you have any insights on that or any of the other active filings we have around HBAR ETFs?
Yeah, so I certainly expect that there will be many ETFs that come to market with exposure to HBAR. I think that what I saw from Grayscale is that they are filing for an IPO, and so I think that there's a lot of activity that's going on over there. I don't have any insight specifically to their HBAR ETF plans, but they're one issuer of many, and so I'm excited to see products come to market either from Grayscale or otherwise.
Gregg, the last time we talked about ETFs, it was kind of just a pie in the sky. We knew that the filings were there, but we didn't know when they were actually going to come to market. But we both agreed at the time that one of the most impactful products was going to be basketed crypto ETFs. And completely agree on that. I think it's going to have a huge impact. So far, we've been doing fairly well in terms of getting representation in some of those filings, but not all of them. How do you think we're doing as far as these basketed ETF products in terms of the filings?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're doing well. It's often viewed as a percentage of the market cap position, and so these asset managers are trying to project what they believe are the top protocols by a certain quantity. So you see top 5, you see top 10, top 20, top 50, those types of figures. The more market share that Hedera can capture, then the higher percentage allocations often you get within these basket products, and so there's certainly more work that we can do as an ecosystem. But I'm glad to see that HBAR is being included because it's vital infrastructure for the financial sector, and this is a great way to gain exposure.
It seems like one of the indexes that's getting a lot of attention in filings is the CoinDesk 20, and we have good representation there. The other one that we have is the Coinbase 50, that we know that there's going to be a fair amount of filings around that. There already has been a fair amount. The CoinDesk 20, of course, like I mentioned, HBAR has good representation, but it is not currently represented in the Coinbase 50. It was in the very beginning. Do you have any insights as to how we can get that back in, or any conversations you've had with Coinbase or along those lines?
Yes, I was. I mean, certainly surprised that Hedera is not there today. We've had a number of different conversations, and I've elevated this to Coinbase. So they're aware of the the scenario and the situation that Hedera is not represented there. So I'm optimistic that it will return. I don't know why it was not included there, and fingers crossed that we'll see that return, because I agree it's an important one.
So, of course, we're talking about one specific part of TradFi here. You can certainly go more into ETFs if you would like, but is there anything else you'd like to pass on since you're focused on those financial markets around TradFi and the Hedera ecosystem?
I think there's certainly market volatility that we're all experiencing today in terms of just the crypto environment. But I think if we were to all zoom out, we'll see that the train has left the station, right? The institutional adoption, nation state adoption of infrastructure for financial markets and beyond, for AI, trust verification, that is continuing. That is a train that is one directional. To the extent that there is a rebirth of the bull market, then, there might be some acceleration. To the extent that there's a prolonged bear market, there might be some deceleration, but the direction of momentum is very, very clear. And that's ultimately what I think people should be really focusing on is that there is adoption. And I think that will be to the benefit of what is ultimately being built into the future.
So, Gregg, is there anything else you'd like to pass on to the Hedera community before we let you go?
For those that are building, keep building. That now is a great time to continue to, deploy code and share the power of Hedera.
Couldn't agree more. Gregg, thank you so much again for hopping on today.
Thank you.
Now, you heard Gregg and I mention options on HBR, and this was the first week that I actually got to participate in that market, and I sold a couple puts. Now, luckily, I sold a bit of HBAR to do exactly what I'm doing right now when I learned about these options on the ETF a couple weeks ago. I have a few contracts now following the drops, but I'll use my first one as an example because I posted about it and the numbers actually kind of rhyme. So for that example, I sold one put contract which obligates me to buy 100 shares of HBR if the price is at the $19 strike on the expiration date December 19th, or if the holder of that put wants to exercise that option anytime before that. Now, the time when I did it, the price of HBR was, I think, about $19.25. For taking that risk, I was paid $190 up front, regardless of what happens with the price. If I do end up with those shares at the right time, I can sell a call, maybe at $20 or $22, again collecting a premium, and if that one gets filled, I'll get the principal bump as well. If HBR keeps falling, I have capital that's allocated to continue selling puts on the way down. Now, of course, I'll be the loser on that side of things for the ones that I bought first, but I can play this game of selling puts and calls on either side of this market. Now, there's all kinds of option strategies out there. This is just what I'm planning on doing because I was planning on buying HBR as it drops anyway, and my plan is to hold on to some of that HBR on the way up to sell at some higher levels as well. So you might be wondering why I've been talking so much about these HBR options over the past couple weeks, and it's for a few different reasons. Number one, obviously, I want to participate in that market myself. I have a strategy, and I want to try to execute it. But I also want to see the HBR ETF be a success. And options add robustness, it gives investors additional tools to use, and it adds liquidity. So it makes that market more healthy. The other thing is, degens in the crypto space have been playing with all kinds of exotic tools for a really long time, and they've gotten comfortable with that. This is one of the more exotic tools in the TradFi space, and it's something that I really think they should learn how to use because I think they're going to appreciate it. It helps them add leverage. They can use the safer side of things like I'm using, but I think it is, again, something that they'll appreciate about the TradFi space. Now, of course, you have to understand how to use options before you get involved. This is not financial advice. I'm just trying to educate the people that don't know about these things and introducing them to a new tool. Sticking with the TradFi side of things, sentiment data shows that Hedera is the top layer 1 in terms of real-world asset tokenization development and is number 2 overall. Chainlink took the top spot, but of course, they aren't a layer 1, but an Oracle network. RWA tokens are another category where we could see these basketed products, so seeing Hedera towards the top of this list is a great sign. Now, I know we're moving kind of fast here, but we have a lot to cover. We're going to get into Hedera DeFi next with Saucerswap, and I know a lot of people have been wondering since they launched their beta version of their app on iOS, when that's going to be coming for Android, and the answer is real soon. They're going to be testing it internally here over the next week or so. Another exciting development is the native token for the platform, Sauce, is now tradable on Coinbase via the Base DEX, joining another popular Hedera token, Dovu. Saucerswap also nabbed a listing for Sauce on LCX. Finally, the Mika DeFi Alliance and Saucerswap published their Mika Sauce white paper, which will help in supporting Sauce trading in the EU jurisdiction. Next, over the past few months, the Hedera NFT scene has really been heating up, and a lot of that is thanks to a new innovation we've talked about in the past that was brought to market by the Dead Pixels Club called the Forever Mint, and that's been adopted by some additional collections as well. And this week, the Hedera Foundation highlighted some of the impacts that that's actually had. They showed that the Hedera NFT sales count increased by 350% and the sales volume increased by 1,500% between Q2 and Q3 of this year. And as mentioned, that was driven mainly by what they call the Forever Mint effect. In Q4, things are looking pretty good as well. A mint party over the past few days drove the Dead Pixels Ghost Club weekly volume north of 1.1 million HBAR, which is a pretty impressive milestone not seen in a couple months. Other collections like PFP Art, Wooks, and Wild Tigers participated in that mint party and also got that corresponding uptick in volume. The excitement was picked up across X, and we even had Kraken posting their support for the Dead Pixels this week, which in turn caught the attention of influencers like Credible Crypto and even the Mog Meme Coin account. I had a few more sales of my own collection, the Bullbarians, which unlocks early and exclusive content in my HBAR Bull world. It's the best way to support the channel if you appreciate this content. You can pick up whatever you want in the secondary on Centex, or you can hit up the active mint on Kabila, which still has the ultra rare Queen available. Shifting gears here a bit, over the past several weeks, I've been highlighting some of the products that are coming out of the Hashgraph group. A few weeks ago, we did an interview discussing Transact, a Hedera group tool that makes using HBAR to pay for Hedera services easy for businesses and enterprises. Then it was announced that the UAE company BIA is going to be using their decentralized identification system, ID Trust, to add efficiency to their new smart city. This week, they put out a press release on their third product. It's Hashcare, which gives a new layer of support for Hedera users. And here's a quick clip explaining exactly what they're doing.
The Hashgraph Group is a pioneering Swiss-based Web3 technology company operating within the Hedera ecosystem. THG enables enterprises to build business without barriers on Hedera's powerful distributed ledger technology. It's simple, secure, and seamless. But when facing a technical issue, this can disrupt your entire business. It's not just code on the line, it's your reputation, your business, your future. Every minute of downtime means lost transactions, lost revenue, and frustrated customers. But imagine if you had a trusted partner that you can count on during these red alert moments. Introducing Hashcare, the world's first customer-centric and enterprise-ready DLT service desk, built specifically to provide technical support for the Hedera ecosystem. Operated by THG out of its Global Capability Center, Hashcare provides comprehensive, multi-tiered technical assistance for managing and supporting applications built on Hedera. Hashcare offers an industry-first ITIL-compliant framework for managed services on Hedera, leveraging Hedera-certified engineers and powered by agentic AI. Select your SLA coverage that meets your business needs, whether it's normal business hours in a single time zone or 24/7 support across multiple time zones. Hashcare enables you to unlock the full potential of Hedera's cutting-edge technology and ensures business continuity through proactive monitoring and automated fault resolution, with guaranteed quick response times and real-time troubleshooting for simple queries to mission-critical incidents. Get started with Hashcare for your Hedera-enabled business.
Another team that's putting out some great products is Hgraph. They actually announced this week that they are doing a collaboration with one of the Hedera council members, AP Plus, on Project Acacia, which we've talked about at length with Rob Allen. But they have another product that they announced recently that we're going to dive into now. I have one of my favorite people here with us today to dive into some of the things that are coming out of Hgraph, particularly their MCP server. Brandon, welcome back, buddy.
It's so good to be back. And I mean, it has to be said, we've been going back and forth on Telegram for a while of trying to get on the show. We've both been so busy. You've just been killing it. Shark Bites has been crazy. So I'm so happy to be back, and we've got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, so much fun. So we'll just dive right into it here, Brandon. To start, can you just explain what this Hgraph MCP server is?
Great question. That's the question on everyone's mind. Another three-letter acronym, and people's eyes roll into the back of their head. So MCP stands for Model Context Protocol, and you can think of it like the USB port for AI. Mm-hmm. So AI agents, you can think of them almost as like a super genius in an empty room. And if you go back to the first ChatGPT, you could write song lyrics with it and do some fun stuff and ask maybe some old sports scores from the 1960s, but it didn't really know like what time it was, what was going on online. So when you give that super genius in that empty room a clock or access to a computer to browse the internet or the ability to write some code, all of a sudden it can start to do so many different exciting things. And that's really where a lot of the innovations in AI have come from, is giving these LLMs and these agents tools, right? And you'll see this if you use ChatGPT or Claude, you'll see, oh, I can add my Google Calendar or my Notion or GitHub. And so what the Hgraph MCP server is it's a tool using this model context protocol that allows these AI applications to connect to the Hedera network through Hgraph. And so that's really what this is about, is it's bringing the entire Hedera network to the AI apps that you already use every day. So you can effectively just kind of talk to the network. We like to call it like a network explorer that explores for you.
Well, let's dig into that a little bit further, both from like an individual user's perspective and from a developer's perspective. How can this be used?
This is really interesting. Okay, so from a developer's perspective, so many builders, whether you're in the Hedera ecosystem, crypto, elsewhere, everybody's using AI now, right? And one of the big challenges, if we zoom back into Hedera, is if you're using AI to develop your Hedera applications, one of the most important aspects of your application from a user experience perspective is, what are people seeing, right? Sure, you're putting stuff into the network, but how do you retrieve that information? And so you can spend a lot of time headbutting on trying to figure out how to retrieve that data, how to integrate it into your application. And it's a lot of patchwork involved. But now if, for example, you're a developer using, let's say, OpenAI's Codex or Claude Code in one of your coding applications. Imagine now that you give it access to the actual network data so it can go and confirm what's actually happening. It can see what's actually going on, and it can write those queries, integrate things into your application. It's kind of like with this Hgraph MCP tool, developers are going from flying blind to now kind of having full vision into the network and full access to all those tools. So it really is a bit of a paradigm shift for builders. And then for retail folks or folks like yourself and myself that kind of are just curious about some things. I'll give you a great example. Rob Allen, who you talked to, of course, Sharky Rob, he asked me a favor. He was like, okay, so we had a big jump in account 0.0.800 recently. Right? Hundreds of millions of HBAR, staking rewards. I mean, hallelujah. But what actually happened? When did those transfers happen? How many of those transfers happened? How quick were they? What does that look like? And I worked with Claude Code and our MCP server and actually put together like a 35, 40 page report complete with graphs. And I can give this to you after we speak, but it put together a full report that I was able to provide to Rob. And he, graciously let me know I could share it with others. It was just so incredible to kind of see that what could be days of work trying to figure something out and get some answers about what happened, I was able to just do it on my computer in 20 minutes, just going back and forth. And of course, to put something complex together like that, you do need knowledge. But if you're going to do something simpler, just kind of asking, what happened on the network yesterday, or what's this portfolio balance, or what are the 5 most recent transactions for this HCS topic? Anybody can now get those answers and verify them, which is amazing.
Well, I had a similar interaction with you. We were wondering, what were the spikes in transaction volume that were happening? And you came back and you did a little bit of digging in using your own server. And we found out that there was a hint, a breadcrumb, nothing definitive, but that it might have been coming from LG. And I followed up because then it allows, even though it's not definitive, it allows you then to ask the right questions. And I went back to Rob, and he was going to the council member meeting this past week. He was going to check up and see if it actually came from them. So it gives you those little breadcrumbs that you can follow on down the line. But Brandon, let's make this even more real for people. Let's try this out and see what we can find.
Love it. Okay, so I've got Claude Desktop open here. It's an app that I love to use. A lot of people use ChatGPT. I've been using this a bit. And if you go in and you have the MCP server connected, and for folks, if you go to hgraph.com/MCP, I've got tutorial videos, step-by-step instructions, super easy to set up. But you can see it connected here right beside, all the different usual suspects. But let's try something simple. I want to see a fungible and non-fungible token portfolio overview for this particular account.
Okay.
And what we can do is, that's just like any user would kind of type in. What it's going to do is Claude is going to say, hey, I need to look at my toolbox here, and what tool can I use to get this information? And so the first tool that it's using is loading context for the network. And from an auditability standpoint, you can actually click and expand these in your LLM apps and see what data we are actually returning to your AI app to make it do what it's doing. So the next thing was, I'm going to query the account to get the portfolio. So you can see it wrote a GraphQL query, much like a human would, for all sorts of different components. Here's the raw response that it received. So here's the stuff that makes no sense to people, right? But the magic is that now that the LLM gets this information right away, all of a sudden we've got all this breakdown of these different tokens and stuff inside of this wallet. Obviously, they've got some GIB. We've got the decimals for that. We've got, obviously got not enough sauce, not enough pack, in my opinion. And then we've got some different NFTs. We've got Hgraph Punks. I like the sounds of this one, Dead Pixels Ghost Club. There's a particular one. I want to go, tell me more about this NFT. And this one, they're obviously holding serial number 3046. So much like we're used to with LLMs, you can get conversational, right? And when you think about traditionally how you would do this using something like Hashscan or a REST API or GraphQL API, it would take quite a bit of time to kind of chip away and do this sleuthing, do this exploring. And with an LLM app like this, it kind of does it for you. That's why we kind of call it the network explorer that explores for you. And it's actually deciding to do some really interesting stuff here where it's actually decoding the IPFS URL. So in an NFT's metadata, you've got things like an image and all sorts of different aspects inside of an NFT. So basically it's decoding some of that information on its own. It's deciding to look and actually browse the internet now for information about Dead Pixels Ghost Club. So we're seeing Very cool. Take on-chain data on Hedera, mix it with internet data, right? Things that are out there in the public, and start to do some decoding and some data work internally. And here we've got the IPFS URL for the NFT. We've got details about this particular NFT. And then it's telling us, hey, here's how many NFTs are out here in the collection. Here's the total supply, some information from CentX about the NFT. And, to wrap this up, we could say, show me the transfer history of this NFT. Now, hopefully this has had a bit of a journey, but this is just to wrap this up. I just want to do one of my favorite activities with this. So basically what this is going to do now is it's going to go and find all the different hops that this NFT has taken over its life. And it's going to show us kind of a timeline of where this NFT has been, who has it switched hands with, all these different types of things. And here is the transfer history. This is really, really cool how we've got a basic overview of this NFT's journey. But as a last little thing, this is where it can kind of get a little fun is now that we've got this conversation and this LLM, Claude Desktop, has all this information in our conversation, I could just break from the mold and say, write me a short poem about the journey of this NFT. This is where I see kind of almost full circle moments of if you give creators and builders easy access to information like this on the Hedera network, I'm wondering what's going to happen when what we put into the network and the data that we use actually starts to manifest as collectibles and material on its own. I remember one of the tests that I did was I was looking at the Bullbarian collections and all those different types of things and doing bubble maps for different stuff like that. So it's really interesting stuff. Here's a poem, the Ghost's Journey. So we're not going to read this out, but we've got a beautiful poem about the journey of this ghost. In relation to, obviously it's referencing other things in our wallet through 3 good homes before it found its rest. So a happy ending here on the HBAR Bull show with this ghost NFT. But data can be fun.
Very cool. So, of course, we can't really even comprehend all of the things that this kind of infrastructure will be able to facilitate in the future. This is just the tip of the iceberg. But I did have one thing that I wanted to ask you to check in particular, because when we used to have Metrica, I was able to find which fungible tokens were most active based off of transaction volume. So I want to see if we can find like the 10 most transacted tokens on the Hedera network. You think we can pull that off?
The top 10 most transacted fungible tokens on the Hedera network.
There you go.
And this is the fun part is I don't know. This is information where you kind of go, well, okay, did something like Metrica do some processing for this? Is this data available? Is it going to pop up? And this is kind of cool. The cool thing, especially for us at Hgraph, is I'm able to internally iterate very quickly on gaps in the mirror node data. So if there is data that we want that isn't necessarily available, let's say, for example, like revenue or different things, I can go and we can start running the data science on that to make that data available. Mm-hmm. So we'll find out if this is available right now. So we've got wrapped HBAR, USDC, Dovu, Sauce, Crowdy, the usual suspects.
Yeah. And we could do that. We could probably break it down by week, so it could be useful for my show, all kinds of different stuff. Brandon, you mentioned you have some tutorials. What would you say would be the first steps of people getting involved with this, both, again, from that individual retail perspective and from developers?
Okay, for the everyman, for the retail person, I would say go to Hgraph, create a free Hgraph account. So you've got an API key. That's the most technical component you have to know. And you just go to hgraph.com/MCP. Like I said, you can decide if you want to use ChatGPT. You can decide if you want to use Claude. We do support other apps, but just for the ease of use, you kind of go pick one of two lanes, whatever app you use. And there's simple instructions step-by-step to go and get it plugged in. And then for developers, this is an MCP server. Get a little technical here. It does support the streamable HTTP method. So if you have an AI app that uses that method, you should be able to connect this MCP server to it. Now, depending on the platform you use, like ChatGPT or Claude, you do need one of their subscriptions, right? They're $20 a month subscriptions. But on our end, through Hgraph, it is a free API key. So there's no added cost for unlocking these capabilities. And as kind of taking it to a next step, we are, and I'll share a little alpha on the show here, we are working on our own agent, right? So taking it a step beyond just an MCP server that connects to existing AI apps. Soon you're going to be able to go and visit the Hgraph agent. And what that will allow you to do is just load a page, connect your wallet, and start connecting. So it's all about baby steps, but I think that the key thing that I want the Hedera ecosystem to know is our focus on Hgraph is definitely about safety and letting everyone kind of come with us. And we thought that the best first step for us all to take together is to get this data in the apps that you're already familiar with and that you already use every day and get that experience in kind of that safe space. And then we're going to venture out together and do some, I think, pretty crazy stuff.
Well, I'm excited about it. Brandon, thank you so much for building these kind of tools for the Hedera network. Thanks for coming on today and telling us about it, and we have to have you back real soon.
Right on. Thanks for having me, Brandon.
Now, we have a great Shark Bites lined up for you this week, but before we get into that, there was an announcement by the Hedera Foundation on a new initiative from Victor AI. Prediction markets are no longer niche. I'd say there's 4 killer use cases that crypto has realized to this point: speculation, store of value, stablecoins, and now prediction markets. Now, of course, these prediction markets have that speculative aspect that people like to participate in, and that's why they are so successful. But I was talking with Zepp, and he made a great point as to how this new twist on speculation has brought some real value, and it's around the wisdom of crowds. We've all heard the thing in the past around where if you have a jar of jelly beans at the town fair, even if somebody is an expert at determining how many are in there, they're usually not going to be very accurate compared to if you have hundreds or thousands of people make a guess. Usually that median between those thousands of people will be really accurate. And with the power of DLT, that's what we're seeing with things like Polymarket and these prediction markets. We're seeing thousands of people participate, and it gives you much better odds as to if something is going to happen, regardless of what that is. These prediction markets are clocking over $2 billion in weekly trading volume and dominating headlines. Now, thanks to Victor AI and the Hedera ecosystem, you don't need to wrestle with wallets, bridges, or confusing interfaces to join. Just open Telegram, tell Victor AI something like $10 on the Eagles to win the Super Bowl, and Victor AI interprets the request, routes it to Polymarket, and confirms in seconds. The next step for Victor AI will be on X, where your opinion posts can become prediction market positions. Hedera's high throughput and low fixed fee infrastructure is the perfect launch pad for this next-gen AI-empowered frontier, so I hope to see more developments here, including native products on the Hedera network. And now let's go ahead and jump into that Shark Bites. All right, so we have Rob back for another Shark Bites. Rob is the director of the Hedera Enterprise Adoption Team now. Of course, he's worn pretty much every hat in the space. He had a great episode that we did a couple weeks ago with Rob, but the one thing we want to get into today is they just had their second in-person meeting for the Hedera Council in London last week. Rob, welcome back.
Hey, Brandon. Yeah, we had not the second ever, the second one of this year, because
in person. Yes,
we run them twice a year. The last one was in Washington DC, very much aligned with the policy kind of narrative that was coming out of DC 6 months ago, and that was the last one under Brett McDowell before the kind of chairmanship handover to Mance Harmon. So we met in London last week. It was a wonderful autumnal or fall week. Lots and lots of council members turned up. I think we had over 2/3, I think, of the council there, which was really good turnout.
Yeah,
and many more online for 2 days, so Thursday and Friday. It was my first one for a few years attending. Where I wasn't a council member, so it was an interesting dynamic. But Mance's style is very inclusive, very collegiate, so it didn't feel like I was on the outside at all. Although, of course, I wasn't participating in any of the governance conversations that they were having, or participating mainly, but not voting. It was a really good week, very, very good week.
Well, there's a lot coming out around Hedera. We had stuff around PwC. We had one of the council members, Google, came out with some stuff, data connections to the Hedera network. There is Nairobi Securities Exchange is putting out some additional announcements. So there's the council and the enterprise adoption of Hedera. It seems like it's moving in the right direction. Do you have any other insights? I know that there's going to be a lot more that comes out from the table talk that's going to be coming, but are there any other insights on the nuts and bolts of what's going on at the moment?
I'll give you a little bit of insight. No alpha, and no, I'm not seeking to steal anyone's thunder either. From table talk will go into quite a lot of detail when it comes out in the next week or so. So we had an events evening to kick the whole thing off. We would normally have a leadership team meeting on the day before, but this was largely a kind of a rehearsal. Mance wanted us to kind of be very tight in terms of the delivery and the flow, and so those of us who were presenting got together, and then we went to what they called Trust and Tonics, an evening networking event at a place called Mr. Fogg's. Great evening after Phileas Fogg, the main character in Around the World in 80 Days. By Jules Verne. So it was a great venue. Really kind of had the right sense of us being a global and adventurous and sort of innovative set of organizations. And we had council members there, and we had prospective council members there, probably, and staff as well, and management. So there was a really good mix from across the ecosystem, discussing, networking, just enjoying each other's company and both meeting and greeting for the first time or reconnecting with old friends. So that was a great way to kick off the council. And then the following day, Thursday and Friday, we had the actual council days. Unlike councils in the past, where we had a lot more kind of governance business to do, we did a lot of governance, or the council did a lot of governance during those 2 days anyway. Mance really set the tone, and the interviews that you had and have been had since he took over as chair in July were reflected in the council agenda. There's a far greater focus on building the enterprise solutions, the council engagement and projects, which of course I'm very much at the heart of from a heat perspective. And talking about use cases and talking about solutions and talking about capability and product, was less obvious in previous council meetings. So this was very much a fresh, new approach. It was very much about engagement and this collegiate approach. And I thought very refreshing. We got lots of really good engagement from the council members. I had a number of presentations to give around heat and around some of the new initiatives that are being driven out of heat. I took the stage with Tim Johnson, who's my AP Plus colleague, and we were talking about not just the solution for Project Acacia, but how we coordinated across all the ecosystem partners, across Hashgraph and Foundation and THA and other participants like Hgraph, who have provided a lot of really good input on the bridge mechanisms that we're using. So there's a lot of coordinating going on there, and that's what we presented almost as a proto heat. This is an example of how we can coordinate across the ecosystem for council member projects and very high profile projects like Project Acacia. So that was well received. That was the normal governance. We talk about committee reports. We talk about member pipeline and all those other things that need to be voted on as well. I spent quite a lot of time with Jonathan Dotan and from Equity Labs and Brian Rich from Accenture, because I'm fascinated about how they're taking the whole of AI provenance to market, which is extremely exciting and very much part of one of the core themes of what Hedera is moving forward with now, along with stablecoins and digital money and asset tokenization and ESG. AI forms the fourth pillar of those core capabilities around which we're going to be building product, building capability, and going to market for our council members. And then the second day was more of the same. I mean, we had some great discussions, great presentations. In fact, Jonathan and Brian did a very good session with the council on going into details about what they're doing. And then we concluded the day with an unconference session, so kind of an informal, open session for discussion of things that were burning on people's minds or wanted to present. And there were some really good subjects came out of that as well. So, as I say, not wanting to steal anyone's thunder or provide any kind of detailed insight from inside the doors of the council meeting, I thought that it was a really, really good, fresh and focused approach to the Hedera Council, which shows that we're on the right track.
So, Rob, again, there's going to be a lot more. The reason why you're not giving too much away is because you're going to have that table talk where there's going to be full presentations of some of the things that were discussed at the council member meeting. But something that I've been feeling, I feel like we're at a bit of a tipping point. And we have some great things that have already been built on Hedera, things like in our DeFi ecosystem. We have Saucerswap, and they're expanding their offerings. And we have Galaxy, which I use on a regular basis. We forget about some of these great things that we already have had that have launched. But I'm also feeling like we have a lot of the things that we've been really excited about that are really going to come to market in earnest. Things like you were talking about carbon credits and ESG. We have these partnerships with PwC. We have 3 of the big 4 that have things coming out. We have, the smart cities and things that are being done with BIA. We have CLSQ and their vision for transactional Internet of Things. I can go down the line of some of these things, and certainly what you mentioned with Equity Lab and what they're doing with AI. Another thing is Earthlings. Their game is going to be launching. Of course, these are things on opposite sides of their spectrum, but I think they can have a really big impact on Hedera. And we've been talking about them. We've been getting excited about them. We know the potential they have, but they really haven't actually come to market yet. And I think they're moving quickly into that phase. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, as we say many times, it takes quite a long time to be an overnight success. And these projects that you've mentioned are kind of testament to a lot of work in the background over a long period of time. The other thing that I'm seeing is that you've got a lot of capability being built or has been built now and has either been open sourced or is being provided under license, where you've got building blocks that can be used for other applications. So, with my heat hat on, I'm not only looking to take projects into a production state. I'm an engineer. I have no interest in rebuilding everything a dozen times if the first one is fit for purpose. So, we do want to kind of utilize what's gone before, what works, learn the lessons from what hasn't worked, and that includes partnering. That includes working with other ecosystem partners, not even just council members, with maybe peers within the ecosystems or potential customers that are operating on the same network. The base Hedera layer, as we know, is super fast, super cheap, super secure. But for a lot of enterprise to engage with that, you need a middle layer. You need a middleware, or you need a partner with whom to go to market. So think of Mondelez and SKUX. Think of Aberdeen and Archax. They're far more likely to get to market with a more nimble and agile and defined business with whom that they can work. So we're very keen to look to partnerships to find ways to reuse componentry that has been built for something else and architecturally can fit, and around which we can build business models either with partners or bring it in-house and run those as separate business units. All of these things are possible, and that's the stage of the evolution we're at. We've got the first movers, those who've operated on the bleeding edge, carry all the scars and fresh wounds of having been in that place and getting that first mover advantage. But we also want to reuse that experience, use that enthusiasm and the people who have been on that front line, as well as building viable enterprise business models with which we can kind of go forward and share across the Hedera Council. I've got 32 council members. I don't really want to do 32 digital identity solutions. I'm not saying that all of them want digital identity solutions, but having a common one, a consistent one, is both validation of that part of the stack, but also a potential kind of business opportunity for us or for someone else to take forward. Another example is stablecoins. I spent a lot of time talking to council members last week about what we were doing both in Australia, but more generally, tidal wave of stablecoins that is coming, this kind of fresh regulatory approach to use of stablecoins, and the ways in which they can adopt within their businesses this new form of digital money. I'm working on a playbook to take that to them, and we can then rinse and repeat across all of the council members a similar, if not the same, way of adopting stablecoins. And from there, everything else follows, right? Not only payments use cases, but asset tokenization use cases where you want to settle a real world asset for a digital form of money. So all of these things become possible once you've kind of cleared that first hurdle, and then building up the stack, you've got lots of other more sophisticated capability that can be kind of drawn together from all of these components as well. So those are the things that we're talking about, and those it's very exciting because we're not starting at that base layer anymore. We are building on experience and product and open source and capability that has already gone before. Maybe we've seen 2 or 3 different versions, and we can pick one, or we can pick the most appropriate one to incorporate. And of course, that's what Usecom has been doing for years. Looking at architectural best practice and the best design patterns and learning from the experience of those council projects that are largely proof of concept, but now ready for moving forward into production.
So, Rob, I'm going to give you an opportunity to take it in the direction you'd like, but you mentioned the 4 pillars that are being focused on. Which one of those is getting the most focus from Heat as far as the most council members that have solutions that are coming to market? And this might be the same pillar, but which one do you think has the most potential?
Well, all 4, and that's why there are 4 pillars, right? So, and just to repeat, it's kind of based around the studios, and okay. The studios have emerged from the need. It's not the other way around. So we've got stablecoins and digital money, so that includes tokenized deposits, even tokenized money market funds as a yield-bearing form of money. So that's one category, and one that as a payments guy, I think is super important, and I just explained why. It's kind of one of the foundations of electronic commerce and Web3 commerce of the future. The second one is the asset tokenization pillar, and of course we've got an asset tokenization studio We've just announced the incorporation of ERC 3643 within that as a new template. 3643 is really important. It's the TREX standard for real-world assets and tokenizing them. But it's quite a sophisticated and complex set of smart contracts which incorporates both privacy and kind of authentication on a digital identity basis for the holding and the transacting with those types of token. So having that in our toolbox actually becomes very important when we start talking to regulated industries. So that's those two kind of go hand in hand, and that once you've got the two, you can settle one for the other. So settle digital money for digital asset. That's what we're doing within Project Acacia. And the third pillar is sustainability and ESG. And as we know, we've spent many years investing in the sustainability use case. I think all of that investment, all of that learning, all of the growth in that ecosystem is about to bear fruit. It's starting already, but the inflection point for those kinds of assets, of course, it's another type of real-world asset. It's another type of green bonds to fund projects that generate carbon credits that are tokenized that need to be acquired and settled for digital money, right? So there's a kind of flow with all three of those that I've just mentioned, and it's all on the same base layer. And then the last one is AI, right? And AI provenance is kind of the entry point. Why would you trust AI unless you can verify that AI? And trust and verification is where DLT comes in. So AI and Hedera go hand in hand, and this is the proposition that Equity Labs and Accenture are taking to market. But in addition to that, we've got this growing area of agentic commerce, agentic payments, and so microtransactions that can be, that we can give delegated authority to transact on our behalf at a micro level, again, brings in all of these different things. So I think for having, those four pillars are pillars on which you can build incredibly sophisticated solutions. And I'm very excited in all four of them, actually. But more so the intersection, in a Venn diagram of those four, what's the innovation in each of those overlaps and intersections, and that's where we'll see some really incredible things emerging, I'm sure.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Rob, is there anything else you'd like to touch on today?
I think I've done everything. It's been an incredible week. I'm super excited around the announcements for NSE. So Frank Mwiti is a good friend of mine. He's got a great vision. And we're just starting to see some of the things with the announcement last week and the innovation hub that they're building out there, and a long kind of list of other things that he wants to do. So we've got that's fresh news. Very interested to see what comes out of COP. So COP 30 is still going, and Wes and the team are immersed out there in Brazil talking about the ESG and sustainability agenda that we've got, and that's very interesting and pertinent. And even though some parts of the world have kind of moved away politically from the climate agenda, it's the rest of the world is still very focused on that. But there's no one else, actually. There's no other layer one that is anywhere close to being as far along as Hedera is, and we're seen as kind of the only layer one of choice, hence Vera's adoption and Olcott and all the others that we've heard about recently. Deloitte, as you mentioned earlier, they're one of the world's biggest consulting companies, embracing all that we've done. And many others.
PwC and Deloitte, right?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it was PwC last week, but Deloitte previously, of course. So two of the four are very specifically looking at Hedera and the Guardian for these use cases. So that's great. I mean, I could go on and on. There's so many things, and this is at the enterprise end. Now you mentioned Earthlings earlier. I mean, as you know, I'm a big fan of Earthlings, and even though, and I think you and I know that we're probably moving rapidly towards some amazing and incredibly immersive experiences, given some of the video that's been released recently. That sets us, I think, in the vanguard of Web3 gaming. When that's released, and the sorts of things that I've got in mind that we can do and bring into that immersive game world. Once it's there, once it's getting adopted, I think is going to be an amazing crossover as well. So lots and lots of things happening. Very excited, as you can probably.
Well, this is, of course. So, Rob, this is something that I just thought of. You're more than welcome to bring a guest. So if you ever want to bring a friend, you talked about Frank Moody from NSC or any of the other partners you have working with Heat. If we want to do a Shark Bites and have somebody come on, you're more than welcome.
I'd love that. I think it would save me talking and everyone listening to me week in, week out. So I'm all for that.
No, Rob, we want as much from you as we possibly could get, but I think that's probably good for today. As always, thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
And as you heard there, Rob has been impressed with some of the stuff that's been coming out of the Earthlings team, and I got another clip this week that was posted in their Telegram. So mobile games, of course, are popular, but one of the ethoses around gaming is the ability to stream. And it's a lot harder to stream and interact with people using those mobile games like Steam Runner. But this game seems like it's set up perfectly for it. And another thing that I love about the Earthlings world is how the steampunk theme makes it feel futuristic, but also has a throwback retro feel as well. And I have my fair share of Earthlings assets, from avatars to tools, airships, land plots, city plots, and of course the in-game currency Steam. And on this bridge, it looks like there's some kind of skylight above, so I want to see how they deal with the shadows for this character. Oh, they nailed it. That looks great. I think the main issue with Web3 games is it hasn't been done right in a lot of the instances, and the Earthlings seem like they're going down the path to do it right, at least in my opinion. It's been a long haul for the Earthlings team, but it's going to be a blast when Barbarians can start meeting in this world. And without further delay, let's go ahead and jump into the crypto and HBAR markets. Now, there's a lot of guesses as to what's putting the crypto market under so much pressure, and some news came out that might explain it. The news lets me blame something that I've never really been a big fan of, and that's treasury companies, which Rob and I discussed a couple weeks ago. One of the largest indexing companies, MSCI, is deliberating on if treasury companies like MicroStrategies should be included in its index, and thus the funds that are based off of it. These indexes are supposed to hold companies, not investment funds, but they're taking a hard look at treasury companies, which look an awful lot like investment funds. If they are removed from the indexes by MSCI, all the funds representing those indexes could be forced to sell. Other index companies like S&P, Russell, and NASDAQ may follow suit, and the selling by the index funds of MicroStrategies could in turn cause selling of Bitcoin that MicroStrategy holds. The fate of these treasury companies in the indexes looks like it's going to be decided in January, at least for MSCI. Until then, there could be some uncertainty, which, as we know, markets hate. Now, of course, there has been scares like this in the crypto market in the past. Sometimes it gets ugly, and other times it's an opportunity. Markets, of course, are already in turmoil. Bitcoin is down 2.5% on the day and over 11% on the week to about $84,000. HBAR is down 3.6% on the day and 16% on the week to 13.1 cents. It tested an area of very strong support at 12 cents that was resistance on the way up and has offered support multiple times over the past year. Now, over the next few months, who knows what's going to happen? The market could go up, it could go down, there could be news that comes out that acts as a catalyst in either direction. Now, for me personally, this is not financial advice. I am looking at opportunities to try to buy. Talked about it with the options that essentially selling puts can be buying, especially if the market continues to go down. I am buying some HTS tokens as well. I am looking for opportunities. I've been building up my cash position, preparing for something just like this. But I think that the regulatory tailwinds, all the things that are happening across the board with TradFi, real world assets, and a lot of the other things that we cover here week in and week out could eventually cause the market to recover here later in 2026. Looking forward to next week. I am going to have a DeFi Corner with Brady on Sunday. I know we were supposed to have one last Sunday, but that didn't work out. The partnership program that the Hashgraph group, Hashgraph Association, is putting together, I'm going to try to do an interview around that. I have a few other interviews that I'm trying to fit in. We're also going to have another Shark Bites with Rob. So if you have any questions for Rob, please drop your comments down below. Drop your questions down below, and we'll try to get those answered for you. That's all we have for now. We'll see you next week.